Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Yeah, listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients, and get out your notebook. And I'm going to say that again, get the notebook out because we are getting ready to go to school. Dr. Aaron Hartman is our guest today, coming from Richmond, Virginia. And first of all, where you can find him is richmondfunctionalmedicine.com. And he also has an Instagram at RV Integrative, and that's RVINTEGRATIVE. And he has some amazing stuff there, and his website is incredible. He's got a great blog that he puts a lot of time into. Very short, quick read, but practical information. And I think anything that you're looking for, and he had a great post about the flu. There's just really, really good information. So, Dr. Hartman, thank you for being our guest, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here and just have a great conversation with you.
Yeah. My Pacho is ready. He's got his C4 shirt representing. Pacholito, good morning, baby.
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well, and let's go.
Yeah. And listeners, thank you again for tuning in. This is season 2, episode 11, and I can't believe it, but we have listeners in 28 countries, like 300 and something cities, and really excited for this episode because I think life is moving fast. COVID is still out, and people are concerned about that, and so taking care of ourselves and our health is huge. And Dr. Hartman, the timing of this show is incredible. So a little bit about our guest. Again, Dr. Aaron Hartman, he helps people with chronic health issues restore their health. He's board certified in family medicine, integrative, and holistic medicine. And we'll explore exactly what those mean throughout this episode. He's also a published clinical researcher. After adopting children with special needs, he began to realize that our healthcare system, into which he had invested decades of his education and career, did not offer many answers for his children. He began to pursue training in functional medicine to help his family, and now uses that training to empower his patients with the information and resources they need to harness their own body's power to heal. So, Dr. Hartman, we always start our show with the thought of the day. So I'm going to jump right into this. And this is a great one. And it's by Amelia Earhart. A single act of kindness throws out roots in all directions, and the roots spring up and make new trees. The greatest work that kindness does to others is that it makes them kind to themselves. So, Dr. Hartman, why would I pick that quote for you after researching you?
Well, probably because life is interesting. You have one small event that seems inconsequential, meaning a little 12-month-old little girl. You don't think it's going to be a big deal. And then you adopt them, and then you meet their caretakers, and then you meet other adoptive parents. And all of a sudden, 15 years later, you have a heart and a passion for kids with special needs, parents of these kids. And you've actually created this whole network of people to support these individuals and an educational platform, and it's changed your entire career. I mean, I think you're being open to change. The road I'm on right now it's really funny. In college, I specifically said, I don't ever want to do research. I specifically said that. Now I've got a research company now, right? I specifically was like, I'm never going to adopt kids, and now all my children are adopted. It's just interesting how walking through doors as they open, being open to like change, it will take you down a very interesting path that will be rich and full, and it'll be hard. We have this saying at my house: Hartmans do hard things. And my kids are tired of hearing that, but it's true. If you do, anything worth doing is going to be hard. And as you do these things and meet people and your life changes, it creates this wealth of experience. It creates relationships. It changes who you are. I am not the same me that I was, and I'm hoping next year and the year after that to be a different me in the future as I experience things, do things, and I personally grow. And I think that quote in many ways speaks to that, and how that these rootlets go out, and you have no idea, like this one podcast, you have no idea who's going to listen to this. You have no idea. This might change one person's life, that might change one, that might change who knows how many. And that's like, it's amazing just to think about. It's overwhelming if you really kind of sit and think about it, to be honest with you.
I love it. I love it. Already some great stuff. And I'm just going to speak to the Hartmans do hard things. Mike and I are both high school basketball coaches, and I have my team reading Angela Duckworth's Grit. And in that book, it's just talking about the importance of doing hard things. And so we can grow. And just like you're saying, and tie it into our thought of the day, is you just don't know that growth that you have of how it's going to go out, and it's going to affect lives. And so cool that you went out being deeply rooted and say, you know what, I want to spread them even more. And then got totally transformed by adopting your child, and then having that open up so many new pathways. And that's what we're going to explore into this show here in a little bit. But let's take one step back. What was life like growing up? Where'd you grow up, and how'd you decide to go into medicine, and so on and so forth?
I mean, I grew up in Harrisonburg, Virginia. My dad's originally from West Virginia, and grew up not having a whole lot. I mean, I didn't realize we didn't have a whole lot growing up because we had all we needed. We had a garden, we grew stuff in the garden, and we went hunting. I didn't like any of this stuff. Now I have a farm out in the country. It's like funny how the things you didn't like doing when you're a kid, right now you do them when you're older. But just, it's just how to safe home, how to safe place to grow up and play and run around. And when I was in fourth grade, I said I want to be a doctor because I saw my family practice doctor walk in and put a stethoscope on my mom's chest and talk to her and gave her some pills. And I was like, I think I can do that. That looks pretty easy. I had no idea it took a lot of years in education to do that. And so I don't, childhood growing up, I was, in retrospect, you call it bullying these days. I was a kid no one liked and they picked on, when I was growing up, I didn't really think a whole lot about it. I just kind of thought, well, these are my plans and goals. We'll see where you're all at in 10 years and see where I'm at in 10 years. And it kind of created a certain futuristic planning resolve. The result was when in college, I didn't give in to peer pressure. I just kind of stayed focused. But I would say the major life-changing event after getting married to my wife, and she's an occupational therapist whose field of expertise was kids with special needs. And our first daughter actually was one of her patients. Our second daughter was one of the patients of one of her best friends, and so it's just interesting how that relationship has helped form my family. And then adopting Anna is really where the fire, I like to invest. I like researching stuff. I like learning new things. I mean, I'm sure you guys, you do as well, but it's different when you got the fire of your own children, young, a little girl underneath you burning. It gets you up at 4:30 in the morning reading research articles. It gets you staying up late researching stuff because you're like, I've got this limited window. And that's where, that was the big accelerant outside of medical school and residency that really forced me I got to learn as much as I can in as short a time as I can. And that was like my third life, so to speak, after college and medical school and residency, where I just learned a ton.
Man, I love that. And I love the word fire, and this show is Life's Essential Ingredients, which is part of our nonprofit C4 Leaders. And C4, as you know, is an explosive. It's powerful. Part of a process that we have within that framework is called Lighten the Fuse. And that's kind of just going to get after it, like you're talking about fire. And so you have a lot going on and doing all the research, and I'm sure a lot of listeners do research and have done research. It takes a long time just to even find one article that is worth reading. I mean, that's hours and hours and hours of work, and then researching it and then digesting it. So my question to you, though, is, since you have a lot going on, what is the best thing that you do for you that allows you to stay lit, so to say?
That allows me, I think, it's the daily practice, like learning new thing, learning a new skill. Like I really did not, I actually also have a seminary degree, and when I started studying Greek, I hated it. It was so hard. It was like the funny letters and alpha, beta, gamma, omicron, right? It's like, all these things you learn, and then it's drudgery. Learning Spanish is why I studied Spanish and semi-fluent Spanish. It was just drudgery. But once you start getting good at it, it's like, wait a second, like, this kind of feeds me now. And then the more you get, once you get past that initial stage, you love learning, you love learning new things. And then for me, it's actually having this repository of information. When I see a patient, being able to connect dots like that, it's almost like learning begets the love of learning. It's, I think the ancient quote is, do I believe in order to understand, or do I understand in order to believe? Like, what comes first? And like, actually the practice of these things, loving a sport, you just get into it. And so I think the biggest thing for me is just staying connected, keeping on studying, and keeping my foundation firm is what keeps my fire lit. And it's also avoiding distraction. It's so easy, to look at social media, to look at news clips. I mean, I do that more just to like know what other people are saying, not personally for my stuff. Being able to disconnect. I think the ability to just to focus and avoid distraction, which our world is full of. And because of my just upbringing, I've had a natural ability just to kind of cut out distractions, which I know these days is super hard, especially for young people.
Yeah. We won't get going because I want to get into your expertise, but that is a hot button for me. Anybody in my life knows that I get fired up and think that we're doing our youth and ourselves just such a disservice by allowing technology to run our lives. And if we can take a step, I got nothing against it. It's a great tool, but just to use it as a tool and then put it away. And so great that to hear that you manage your life because you're so focused on kind of building yourself up to be the best that you could be, to then give that gift to your patients and to your kids, and love how you're learning Spanish so you can connect with your patients that speak Spanish. But I want to get into, we'll take this technology spin, and I would love to get into stress because I do think all those go hand in hand. So how would you advise, I'm coming to you, I'm 52 years old, and I'm coming to you and I'm just like crazy stressed out. What advice, what steps do you give your patients to manage stress?
The first thing is like, with stress is what's causing it? What are you involved in that stresses you? And what resonates with you as far as stress reduction? I have some patients, my wife loves to draw nature pictures, sit down, just look at a bird. And like, that is super relaxing for her. I enjoy working out on the farm. Some people like meditation, prayer. Like, you need to find something that resonates with you that allows you to disconnect. But the problem is that in our world, we have a hard time disconnecting because of all the TVs, social media, news feeds. There's a direct correlation. This is what's so interesting. There's a direct correlation with exposure to news feeds and anxiety. This past week, I'm seeing someone in my office who's actually a local TV personality. So he's basically up at 2 a.m, getting the station at 3. And I was talking to him and he's like, you know what? When I go home, I do not look at any TV. I do not look at any social media. I don't look at any of that stuff. I'm like, wait a second, this is your job. And you go home and don't look at any of it and don't want your kids doing that either. It makes me think back to the whole Steve Jobs thing where he had kids. He didn't give them the iPhone, right? Because he realized, hey, developing brains, like, it's interesting. Blue lights are actually activating. They cause stress. You take a 4-year-old kid and like babysit them, right, with an iPad, take it away after now, and what happens? Yeah. He does not have the ability to self-regulate, right? That child, boy or girl. And just, there's things that contribute to our stress and anxiety. It's finding out for you, like, what's essential is really keeping up to date with whatever you're doing. Is it really essential? Relationships, we neglect relationships for these staying in the know. And the reality is, when you look at science and you look at, economics and business and all these things, by the time it makes it to the corporate consciousness or the general consciousness, it's already old news. And so if you're keeping up with stuff by following news, you're actually already behind the 8 ball. And a great example of that is COVID. I was tracking COVID late December, beginning January, and actually started posting on YouTube about it late January. Before it was March, before it came to our country's consciousness. And so if you waited for the news to tell you about it, you're already behind the 8 ball. So just realize you don't have control. What you have control of, step back and live your life. Don't let things tell you how to live your life. There's so many ways to take that, Jeff. The question is just individualizing it to the person.
Mm-mm. I know it spoke to my Pasha. Pashito, you had a comment?
Yeah, Dr. Hartman, and just listening to your story, and you're learning languages, you have patients, kids, research, you're on a farm. Man, I'm getting a little stressed out thinking about your day, a whole day long. And for you, is it that just is your stress relief is when you're on the farm, working on the farm, or personally, what is that you exactly do to kind of, hey, I got a full day. How do I kind of manage all that?
Well, my mornings, like I wake up early and it's no one around, no kids, no one's bugging me. It's quiet. Get my cup of coffee, sit down and just stretch and read for an hour. It's just relaxing. Go to the gym, get my workout in, do my interval training. Then I go to work, and when I'm at work, it's chaos. It's like I'm interrupted a bazillion times from 8 till 5 or 6, there's no free time for nothing. I'm between texts and emails and patients. It's crazy. Come home, spend family time, kids, dinner, put the kids down and just have a little bit of time quiet. I actually will listen to like a book with my son, read with him, play some games with the family, put them down, and then see what I need to do for the next day. On the weekends is when I do a lot of my farm work. It's just, I'm not really playing video games. I'm not, it's my family's my main thing. I'm not like, going out trying to hang out and do a bunch of other stuff. Our family doesn't have, like, all the kids don't have a different sport for a different night of the week. We just decided to make our family our main thing. We don't have a lot of distractions outside of our family and home. I mean, it's hard enough. We got 3 kids. It's hard enough, right? We don't need any more. But it also just, our concerns are our own. They're not, that's one of the things with the way our society is set up. We make other people's concerns our own, and you should be able to help people, but at the same time, you need to be able to like separate yourself from that. And that's where I think the idea of unplugging is just lost to most people these days. And so just having that ability, it's really nice. I do a little meditation in the morning for 15 or 20 minutes. I try to skip out in the middle of the day during my lunch break, which is usually working through lunch, right? I try to get out in my car for 10 minutes and just do some controlled breathing relaxation. Sometimes I fall asleep doing that. And then just keeping in tune to myself, knowing when my stress levels are going up. I'm like, whoa, like there are some times I get so kind of revved up and I'm like, hey, honey, I can't come, because I have like an online business my wife helps me with. And I'm like, I can't talk about when I get home. I just, I need just to be kind of like, just play with the kids, eat dinner, and go to bed, just being able to separate those things out and having control of your schedule and your life as best you can, realizing none of us have ultimate control. It's all, pseudo control, but just having that ability to unplug and just live in the moment. It's what I say is, anxiety is worrying about the future, and rumination is looking back at the past and having regrets. Just be in the present and enjoy whatever you're doing, and that's where social media, news, and emails and all these things pull you away from the present.
I love it. I'm going to kind of come full circle to all that, but I want to go back to about stress real quick and anxiety, and how Steve Jobs didn't give his kids any iPhones and thing, and how you're encouraging your patients. We're encouraging the listeners to take time because our stress and from always being on, our amygdala is always firing, and so we're kind of in this fight or flight mode way too more than we need to be. And I want to get into your expertise now on how being in that mode and having more stress increases our cortisol level, and then our body's natural response to that is to think that, hey, we either need to run real fast, fight, or react in some other way. And so we crave sweet and salty food as part of that response. And then I want you to talk now about the importance of nutrition and how, because I know I want to really get into your expertise now, because you have so many great things that you do to help your patients. Let's just get into the importance of nutrition and to be aware of when you are stressed. Let's start here. When you're stressed, maybe some foods to eat that will help you kind of heal your body.
Well, it's when you're stressed, you have more, like when your cortisol is up, there's certain things you need to support your adrenal gland, and ultimately high cortisol, high stress. It's not an adrenal issue. It's a brain issue. It's your hypothalamus talking to your pituitary, telling your adrenals, hey, fight or flight stress. It's your brain telling your sympathetic nervous system, throw off adrenaline, throw off noradrenaline. And so it's ultimately at the level of the brain, but you need nutritional support for all the hormones associated with that, like vitamin C. It's really interesting. Native American Indians, didn't get scurvy. I mean, there's no orange trees in Canada. Like, where were they getting vitamin C from, right? It was actually elk. It was animal adrenals they would eat to maintain their vitamin C level. And you need lots of C for adrenal function, trace minerals. all these processed foods you're mentioning. When you process a food, you remove the trace minerals, you remove magnesium, potassium, zinc, copper, sulfur, silica, molybdenum, all these things that are needed that are in minuscule amounts you're removing when you process a food. So you need trace minerals, you need vitamin C, B vitamins. 40 to 60% of Americans are deficient in any one B vitamin. So if there's 12 of them, that means everybody's going to be deficient in 3 or 4, right? And I routinely see people who have unmeasurable levels of thiamine and riboflavin. I see it all the time when I check these levels on patients. So, basic support. We're all kind of stressed to a certain degree. So basic, trace minerals, and that's where things like bone broth come into play. It's interesting. Back in the day, we all had bone broth. I remember watching a Leave It to Beaver episode when I was a kid, which dates me a little bit. And the kids were playing, and Joan's like, "I'm gonna make dinner," right? She goes in the kitchen, pulls a bone out of the fridge, puts it in the pot, starts boiling it, right? I'm like, that was so normal in the 50s that no one blinked about that. And I'm like, wait a second, did she just pull a bone out of the fridge? She must be in my house, except to be a bone out of the freezer, not out of the fridge, But the point is, like, basic dietary things like that, getting bone broth, which is rich in trace minerals and collagen. These are basic things that can support our bodies in our stress state. And the problem, I think, one of the many problems, Jeff, is that not only are we stressed, but we're nutrient deficient and we're stressed. And part of the thing when you have these stress cycles and the stress is gone, your body needs enough nutrition to quell the inflammation from the stress. You have to burn off cortisol. Like when an animal is stressed, an antelope is running from the tiger, right, or whatever, and it makes its buddies dead, right? The animal shakes, right? You ever seen your dog, they shake? They're burning off their excess adrenal hormones, noradrenal hormones, and then 5 minutes later, they're eating while their buddy's being eaten in the background, and they're back to normal. Well, you have to have enough nutrient to be able to burn that off. And so it's not just the stress; it's the nutrient deficiencies. It's the inability of having adaptive things to burn off stress, like physical activity. One of the best anti-anxiety medications, antidepressants. One of the best adrenal stress reducers is exercise. And we all sit down in chairs for 8 to 10 hours a day. So just getting up and moving a little bit, routinely can be a big benefit to your general plan for controlling stress.
Mm-hmm. So many good tips. I want you to give one quick plug for, if you were to give, and maybe this is a little naive question, but if you were to give one of your patients advice on buying a supplement, because it's so tricky now. I think you can go into any CVS or Walgreens or whatever, pharmaceutical, stores you have up in your area, and like just get paralyzed by, oh man, how do I trust, which ones are regulated by the FDA? So what would you recommend, or can you even do that? And I know it's a little bit of a loaded question, but if there's a listener out there that's saying, yeah, I'm not able to eat as healthy and I would like to take a supplement, what would you recommend? How would they start that process?
Well, I actually did a blog series about this exact thing on my list of blogs. It's 25% of calcium supplements. And this is a study from 2015 that were purchased in the regular store had measurable levels of lead in them. That's insane. It's interesting. Calcium supplementation back in the 90s, a lot of it came from a plastic called benamine. If you remember back in the 70s, there's hard kind of plastic plates. Most of it was actually sourced from South Africa, high in calcium. Let's just grind it up and put it in a supplement. Like, that's what you're dealing with when you just buy something off the shelf. Fish oil is great. It's healthy for your brain, right? When you burp fishy from a fish oil supplement, it's rancid fish oil you're consuming, which is bad for your health. And so, the first thing I would say is you got to find a good quality source where you can get a certificate of analysis from the manufacturer. Are they testing it for lead and heavy metals? Do they track their manufacturing stream? Where are they getting their raw materials from? These are after they manufacture the supplement. Are they doing post-manufacture testing? If you remember the whole eosinophilic pneumonitis thing back in the 80s, it was from tryptophan that was sourced from Japan. If you remember that, for a while, for like a decade, you couldn't get tryptophan from Japan because they changed their manufacturing process. It created a chemical that actually ended up causing eosinophils in people's lungs and killed some people, And so I say it like that, not to scare people to say, don't take supplements. It's like food, eat real food. Don't eat fake food, get pharmaceutical high quality supplements. And so I've actually put on my website, created a place where people can actually get those things, and I've learned in my practice, but go get some vitamin C, and people are like, well, what kind of vitamin C, which one? So I've gotten to the point where I'm very specific. I specify the types of C, the types of magnesium, and the manufacturers, because I've realized when people get the wrong stuff that doesn't work and they come back and say they don't feel better, So I just recommend people get high quality supplements. I've got a lot of resources on my website that actually go into that for this very reason, because as a doctor, the very first thing I'm supposed to do is no harm, right? So if I tell you to take a B vitamin, at worst, you pee it out, it turns your urine like orange, no big deal. I want to make sure you're actually getting the stuff in there and nothing else, right? Same thing for vitamin C. A lot of C in our country is actually sourced from genetically modified corn that has a lot of mold in it. Some people can't tolerate a typical C because of that reason. Where's your C being sourced from? How are they getting it? So and these are things that I've spent years researching and kind of figuring out. And so I kind of put a lot of those resources on my website for people just because it's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I loved your website, and listeners, it's richmondfunctionalmedicine.com. And you can already tell just in our short conversation so far, Dr. Aaron Hartman is just passionate about studying and researching and finding the answers that take a tremendous amount of time to find. And so go to his website and tap into his expertise. And he's got some incredible resources. And I do want to give you, because I'm not all the way, I know, do you work virtually at all? Because I know you have an online community. If there's some listeners that are like, man, I'm in California and you're in Virginia, and obviously, you can't be my doctor from afar, but can people that are listening tap into your expertise and join your community? And I know you're not, listeners, he's not coming on here to plug what he's doing, but me being a nurse, I see tremendous value in everything that he offers, because he's given it the answers to the tests that have taken him a lifetime to find those answers. So back to the question, Dr. Hartman.
Well, I think, Jeff, when you told me you actually used to be a nurse in the hospital and intensive care, I'm like, okay, this guy gets it. Like in the hospital, who makes the big difference with patients' outcomes in the hospital?
Oh, the nurses all day.
Yeah, they're the ones who are basically making sure the orders happen, make sure the patients know what's going on. Education, right? And so you can see the smartest doctor in the world, but if you don't have someone help you figure those things out, so that's kind of the one things I've kind of done with the website. So we do have a community that's curated by myself. I have some health coaches in there, a nurse practitioner, help guide people through. We have question and answer sessions. People ask me questions and I'll do videos to answer the questions. So the way to kind of tap into what I'm doing is actually my community. It's like you join, we've got a signature course, which is the roadmap to resilience, that kind of walks through foundational, gut health issues. We're working on a new gut course we'll be launching soon. And then within that ecosystem, people are asking individual questions. Hey, I heard about mold stuff and mold and health. What can you do about that? So I did a whole series of videos talking about checking a crawl space. So someone asked me about, checking their house. And so realizing I can't tell everybody about checking a crawl space out, I actually went through my crawl space, I did some videos and said, this is what you should look for, right? And so I know it's kind of, I actually did one with my cows. We have cows. I raised my own cows. And so I kind of went out there and talked about healthy cows, and we have some bees as well. So I talked about bees, and, it's kind of weird, but it's just like people ask questions, and I think just doing short little videos. And then within that, there's also the wisdom of the community, because, I don't know everybody's experience, but if you have a community of 100 people, 200 people, there's someone in there who might have had a similar experience that can help you with that. So I think the way to kind of access that from afar is actually through the community we've set up on our website.
Nice. I love that. And again, his website, richmondfunctionalmedicine.com, with Dr. Aaron Hartman. I did watch one of your videos in your house. You were sealing off the vents, I think, or something. I forget, but yeah, it was cool. I was like, oh man, this guy just gets down and he's going to figure stuff out. You remind me of like a medical MacGyver. You just are going to figure stuff out. And on behalf of science, on behalf of health, on behalf of this significant gap that we've created in our healthcare system of not having time to find somebody that you can trust to guide you on this journey so you can plant your roots and then have those roots go out and touch other people in your life. I want to change it up to a little personal for my Pasho and I. We didn't even talk about this, but what are your thoughts on sleep apnea and how it is like, and Mike and I have it, and I even have I have severe sleep apnea and central apnea. And Mike just has regular sleep apnea, not the same challenges that I have. But what is up with all the sleep apnea?
Okay, I could talk about this for hours. So sleep apnea is the undiagnosed, one of the many, there's many undiagnosed elephants in the room. This is one of the many elephants in the room. We have all kinds of elephants hanging out in my rooms in my house, right? And so the misnomer that you have to be an obese male with a thick neck. If I wait for those people to walk through my room, I'm only going to diagnose the worst of the worst. And so one of the things I've realized is people that are athletic, they're hypermobile. Actually, you all mentioned you do sports. Look at your athletes, your Michael Phelps, the big long head, small mouth, like these hypermobile people that have this athletic advantage. They can run faster like Usain Bolt, also have smaller upper airways. 1 out of 30 Americans is hypermobile, and certain sports like volleyball, like gymnasts, they have an overrepresentation of that. They have an increased risk for upper airway resistance syndrome, which is a type of, I call skinny people's sleep apnea. It's so common, and so it's really interesting. I'm now diagnosing sleep apnea by looking at people's mouths, looking at their dental arch, seeing if they have a high arch palate, seeing like the angle of their teeth, do they grind their teeth, do they have CMJ? Getting cavities when you're older. Why? Oh, I cracked my teeth. You're grinding your teeth at night. Do you have undiagnosed sleep apnea? It is so common. So in my functional clinic, I see a lot of Alzheimer's patients, Parkinson's, neurological patients. They all get a sleep apnea evaluation now, and over half are positive for at least mild sleep apnea. Atrial fib, new onset AFib, new onset abnormal heart rhythm, all get sleep apnea evaluation. Over 60% of them in my clinic are coming back positive. Long COVID, I realized a correlation with hypermobility and long COVID in patients. And so they're all getting sleep apnea evaluations. And again, over half of them are coming back positive. It is so crazy common. And the problem is that our current diagnostic criteria, it's only if you're really bad. It's only if you're falling asleep when you're driving. It's only if you snore so badly your spouse like shakes you, right? For me, and my personal story is, and y'all are guys and you all kind of get this, and being a guy, the whole guy thing, right? So I never dreamt, right? And my thing growing up was I don't dream because the superior mind doesn't need to dream, right? And that's just a little pride and hubris, a little honesty, unfortunately, because I'm like the rest of everybody else too, right? And I'm like, I never dreamt, right? So I had a couple caps put on when I was 16, and they hurt me forever. They was all sensitive, didn't know why, no one could fix them, blah, blah, blah. Started grinding my teeth a little bit in my 30s, getting a little TMJ, no big deal. So started, getting the functional medicine thing, talk with my functional dentist. Actually, he's a biologic dentist. He's like, oh, well, grinding your teeth could be associated with sleep apnea. So in my clinic, I just tested myself, and I had very, very mild. My desaturation was only to 92%, which actually does not meet criteria by the American College of Chest Physicians. I only had 5 events an hour. My REDI was only 5. So I didn't meet criteria, but I'm like, let me buy one of these things anyway from my dentist, right? Started dreaming. My gum line recession went away. The teeth sensitivity I've had ever since I was 16, gone. Okay. And that's one of the things in the functional medicine world I see is like, you don't meet criteria yet. You're not diabetic enough yet. Your sugars aren't bad enough yet. You're not obese enough yet. You're not sick enough yet for our system to say you need help. And that's one of the things, a lot of things. Now, let's say you're a little overweight and you have a little high cortisol and you have a little stress and a little sleep apnea and a little hypermobile and your diet's a little off. I just created an avalanche. And that's one of that's connecting the dots is what we do on a routine basis. And sleep apnea is one of those elephants in the room that is routinely overlooked. And I see it all the time. The local pulmonology guys that I send my patients to for their evaluation used to call me. They stopped calling me. They're just like, okay, I don't know how Hartman's figuring this out, but most of the people he's seeing us have sleep apnea. And it's usually a lot of my people with chronic health issues, younger females, athletic individuals that are coming to see me because they've lost their edge. It's so prevalent. I can't overemphasize how common it is.
Mm-hmm. And just the long-term effects, people just not realizing, thinking that, man, I'm just tired because I'm stressed out, which you are, the effects of sleep apnea. I'm just tired because I'm not eating well. And just, yeah. So I Love that insight that you just shared. Wasn't aware of that. I was shocked when I got diagnosed with it because Mike and I don't know what size his neck. I think the criteria was a neck size greater than 17. I was like, man, and I'm thin. I was like, I don't meet this. And then listening to you, it's like, yeah, I bet you my airway is just a little bit small. And then, having central apnea was a little bit crazy in itself. But let's move on. Let's get on to just another everyday headaches. What would you do if there's a listener out there who's just going to come to you? How do you help them, even differentiate between a headache and a migraine, first of all, and when should they kind of follow up with their doctor?
Actually, the reality is most headaches are probably some variant of a migraine. There's two migraine centers. One is actually in your V2 ganglia, which is kind of your sinuses. So a lot of people's sinus headaches, actually, they're a migraine variant. The other migraine center is your C2 back in the back of your head. So my neck pain, my neck's stiff, my back of my head hurts. That's another migraine variant. So when you see people with migraines, you look for other things like light sensitivity, nausea. But the reality is a lot of people with these sinus headaches with bad pain, they're actually, at least in my area, migraine variants. And migraines are so crazy common. Everybody's got a threshold at which they'll have a headache. Maybe for one person, it's a car accident hitting their head. One maybe person that's having a bad night's rest. And so there's things that can actually lower or increase your headache threshold. So things like sleep apnea, lower your threshold. Things like magnesium deficiency, lower your threshold. Things like chronic stress, lower that threshold. One of the things I see often are people eating processed foods, things like MSG, red dyes, these dyes. It's really interesting. You see a 4-year-old kid eats a red dye and it makes them have ADHD. Well, is it ADHD or is it their brains put on fire by the red dye, right? I mean, all the pediatricians know red dyes are bad for kids, right? Right. I mean, it's just common knowledge. It was common knowledge when I was doing my training in 1996. And so one of the things I say is like, do an elimination diet, and I've got one on my website people can download and basically walk through that. If you've got headaches and joint stiffness, there's one that removes nightshades, which are potatoes and tomatoes. If you've got a lot of allergy symptoms, one of them you remove histamine-rich foods. And it's amazing how many people, their headaches get so much better just with an elimination diet. Then it's environmental stuff, mold. I see a lot of people have mold issues. It's crazy to think half of the buildings in our country have some kind of water damage, right? I mean, if half the buildings have water damage, it's like, well, maybe mold, 25% of all new asthma is related to environmental mold, and mold for some people actually is one of those things that lowers their headache threshold. So I would say, look at your environment, environmental chemicals and toxins, food chemicals and toxins, and then stressors of sleep. And, you go through those and 89% of headaches are either gone or so much better. People don't come back and see me. And then all the cool things like, magnesium supplementation, riboflavin supplementation. There's a whole lot of other herbal things you can use for headaches, anti-inflammatories, all the cool kind of functional stuff. But these basic lifestyle things are things that are usually not talked about in a neurology office because it takes time to go through these with a patient.
Exactly. It takes time. And again, off air, Dr. Hartman was saying that his intake for his patients is 2 hours. So that just tells you the value he's going to bring. And again, you find him at richmondfunctionalmedicine.com. I'm going to just finish up this headache conversation because I want you to share your insight on what people normally do for the headaches, because we're not taking the time to do all the things that you suggested. And so we'll just pop a Tylenol or ibuprofen. What's the downside to doing that, and what's going on in our body when we create that pathway for that drug to work and it's turning off other parts of our body that are not going to help us at all?
Well, the thing about it is headache is a symptom. It's not a disease. And so if you just cover the symptom up, you might be fine and you'll be okay. But the question is, if anything else is going on that might lead to diabetes, if it's related to your foods, or might lead to heart disease, if it's related to other things, it just gets ignored, And so like Tylenol, for example, lowers your glutathione levels. Your body actually has to detoxify the Tylenol. And one of the things that happens is your glutathione levels go down. Well, what's glutathione? It's your body's primary antioxidant. And so it's really kind of interesting with all the COVID stuff, and upper head colds and viral things. There's a lot of data on using N-acetylcysteine or NAC, which is a supplement that actually has antiviral activities and boosts your body's immune system. What it does, it increases glutathione production. And oh, by the way, N-acetylcysteine, also known as mucomist, is an antidote for Tylenol overdose. You know, you go to the hospital, you may have even seen mucomyst in the hospital before, right? Like, yeah. So it's interesting how, like, literally this one thing that helps your headache temporarily is depleting this other thing your body absolutely needs. You know, with ibuprofen, you know, great anti-inflammatory, does a lot of good things, but it also can cause GI upset and increase this thing called leaky gut, which is, you know, was considered hooey 20 years ago and craziness 20 years ago. Now all the GIs know about it because it's like one of the big causes for autoimmune diseases, which are one in 12 Americans has an autoimmune disease of some sort. And ibuprofen can push that process forward a little bit if it's used routinely. You know, one off, two off, no big deal. It's just when people get in the habit of doing this over and over again. And I've kind of created my own cocktails for headaches that work pretty well. You know, high dose magnesium glycinate, riboflavin. You know, there's a lot of other bizarre things we can talk about, you know, B vitamins, but there's a lot of things you can do for headaches outside of like, you know, medications.
I want to jump in real quick, tap your expertise again with the flu. So, you know, again, everybody's been wearing their masks, and so hopefully the flu is, it's obviously out there, but hopefully not going to be transmitted as much. But what advice do you have for people just staying healthy with like flu season being up on us?
Well, I mean, there's all the usual stuff you know about, you know, hand washing, social distancing, mask wearing, blah, blah. We all know that now, right? But then, like, you know, the most important nutrient for your immune system making antibodies, switching from your innate to your adaptive immune system, the most important nutrient for actually helping increase natural killer cell count, you know, which fights off viruses and cancer, is vitamin D. And once you realize that 42 to 43% of Americans are vitamin D deficient, 82% of people with skin of color in our country have vitamin D deficiency. All of a sudden, we need a lot of vitamin D, you know? And so it's really interesting, all the data on D with flu and how it can actually lower the severity of flu. That's the first nutrient I start with. And the reality is most people are so deficient, they can take 4,000 to 5,000 units a day safely. In the UK, they recommend 4,000 units a day as their general governmental recommendation. Here we recommend 800 to 1,000, which kind of blows my mind because in Canada, they recommend 1,000 for breastfed babies. So literally the doses we recommend here are even lower than what they recommend in Canada for babies, right? That's the first nutrient. The second thing is NAC or N-acetylcysteine. There's great Swedish data on if you're taking NAC 600 milligrams twice a day and you're exposed to flu, it lowers your risk of symptoms up to 80%, but you still create antibodies, meaning your body gets exposed, you recover. I mean, that's a simple supplement. That's easy enough to do. Zinc is hugely important for the process of basically your body turning over virally infected cells. You know, when you talk about, you know, the ionophores, which are these little holes that go in cells that get stuff into them, zinc is one of the things that facilitates that. And a lot of people are zinc deficient, which is one of the reasons why most of the little lozenges, you know, for sore throats and things actually have zinc in them. And doing 30 milligrams a day. And when you're acutely ill, you know, up to 50 to 60 milligrams a day during acute illness. Vitamin C is the last nutrient that's hugely important. It's really interesting. Goats, when a goat gets sick, a goat in its liver can make up to 10,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C. Okay, we do not have we can recycle vitamin C. We can't make it. And so it's really interesting how when you get ill, your body needs more vitamin C. There's interesting, here at Eastern Virginia Medical School, Dr. Merrick, who's one of the top critical care specialists in the world, actually published an article in 2016 or 2017 in the American College of Chest Physicians using IV. Here, hey, actually, you'll get this, Jeff, using IV vitamin C on patients with sepsis in the ICU lowered mortality 80%.
Wow.
It's published literature. You can pull it up. It's out there. Why is not every ICU in the country using that? Yeah. You know, it's really here at MCV locally, they're actually doing an IV vitamin C protocol for cancer patients. And one of my friends went through it, and he, like, when he did chemo and stuff, he had a pretty bad cancer during COVID, and he had like almost no symptoms after having his bone marrow radiated. And the nurses were like, this only happens with the people getting IV vitamin C. And so, like, it's a huge, huge thing. It's important for our immune system. You know, take 500,000 milligrams, you know, 2-3 times a day when you get acutely ill, or once a day during prevention. I mean, these are things that are safe and have tons of literature on them. And the worst case scenario is, you pee out the stuff, but when you have all this literature that's published around the world, to me, it just seems boggling that we don't talk about it on a routine basis with patients.
Yeah, again, it's not to get going on our healthcare system, but yeah, we don't make the time for the patients to have time to have their questions answered. Hopefully patients can try and take the time to get prepared when you're going to visit your doctor and write down your questions so you don't forget them, because sometimes we get wrapped up in the moment and the doctor's late and then we get upset and they come in and out 10 minutes and all right, see you, and then you forgot, hey, I forgot to ask him the questions. Last one, and then I got our closing kind of question for you. What are your thoughts on coffee and how much is too much coffee? Because my Pasho and I love me some coffee.
Okay, so coffee is like many things. There's good coffee and bad coffee, right? There's good food and bad food. So coffee is one of those things, either it's a superfood or it's toxic, right? So what makes a difference? Well, if you're getting coffee that's sprayed with pesticides, that's overburnt, which unfortunately is like the dark espresso ones, that was grown in a low altitude area and if you've ever been to anywhere where they do coffee, they basically leave it out and let it dry. And if it takes more than 2 days to dry out, it starts molding. So if that's the kind of coffee you're consuming, then you're getting some mold and some, things called advanced glycation end products, which are these inflammatory molecules from the over toasting. But then you got literature on coffee lowering your risk for heart disease, lowering your risk for dementia. I mean, literally, Dr. Brenson, I think I mentioned him before, he literally has coffee bean extract as part of his protocol, and he's at the Buck Institute at UCLA. I mean, he's like big time, right? He's got a book you can buy at Costco, End of Alzheimer's. I mean, he's big time, right? And it's part of what he does. So that's the thing. It's like so I personally get high quality coffee. I try to source it, where it's coming from. Try to do organic. Personally, I like, organic is like the lowest hanging fruit for me. Like that's like the entry level. You can do organic and still not be done the right. So I tend to research it a little bit, find where they're sourcing it from. And then, then enjoy your coffee. Typically, 1 or 2 cups a day is okay. Don't consume it after 2 or 3 in the afternoon, just because it can affect your sleep that night, But coffee, yeah, it's one of those things. I love my coffee too. It's just like it's like anything, is red meat bad for you, or is it the kind of red meat you're eating, right? It's just getting good quality, real food, unprocessed, unsprayed, unchemicaled, unadulterated. I think a lot of these questions like coffee or dairy or milk or other things, the biggest issue is, how are you getting what you're eating? That's probably the underlying cause for most of these controversies, so to speak.
Love it. Love all these answers, and just love again how you're just a student that is always learning to find the best way to live life and to share that with your patients. So speaking of living life, we're going to the last part of our interview here, legacy. And John Alston has a great quote that I love. The only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And so let's fast forward, maybe 40, 50 years for you. You're healthy, but now you're getting up there in age and you're on your deathbed and you're surrounded. I think you had 3 amazing children. They're all adults living their life. You're surrounded by them. What is it you want them to feel? What do you want your patients to know? What do you want to leave behind from the interactions that you've had with them?
I think, the primary thing that drives me is my personal faith. That's the reason why we adopted our kids. It's the reason I believe your body has the ability to self-heal. I don't think it's an accident. I feel like there's a purpose for things. And so, when I finish leaving my life, I just want to, be at peace with that. I was done what was given to me to do. I ran the race. I finished the course. I did what was right. Regardless of, this is where things, regardless of the outcome, I'm not, it's really, I'm not an outcomes-based guy. I'm like, I do the best and do what's put before me, once foot on the other, regardless of the outcome. The result tends to be success, but I don't find my fulfillment in the actual outcome. It's the actual following and doing. And so I just want my kids to be good people who work hard and do, again, Hartmans do hard things, do the right stuff, and raise, I think the biggest thing would just to see good grandchildren that are growing up and are good people. That's like probably the best thing to see, to know that it's actually been passed on,
What a great visual right there. Pashito, get us out of here. Give us your closing comments.
Dr. Hartman, appreciate it, man. Your knowledge is incredible. Thank you for educating us. That was wonderful. And the first thing I'm going to do is go check where my coffee's coming from. We can't have that. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Again, it's been Dr. Aaron Hartman. You can find him at richmondfunctionalmedicine.com. He's been on Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike. It's been another incredible episode. So much practical knowledge. Listeners, we thank you for tuning in. Quick plug, our book is out. The Pizza Day series, the first book of 5. And the first one is titled We Rise Together. You can go to pizzadays.org to check it out. And we appreciate your support. Dr. Hartman, we really appreciate you coming on the show. You have any closing comments or?
I guess just, to just recommend to your audience, you're having your health is important because it allows you, health is not the goal. It's the vehicle that allows you to live your life. And so not becoming addicted to it or just realizing just having your health allows you to live your life fully and to be fully who you are. And it's hard to be that when you're chronically ill. So just, be fully who you should be fully who you're meant to be, and your health is a part of that.
I love it. What a great way to end. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. Pashito, boom, baby, that just happened. We out.